The night sky above the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico was clear, the stars twinkling with their usual distant brilliance. Dr. Elena Rodriguez yawned, her eyes heavy from hours of staring at computer screens. It was another quiet night shift, monitoring the vast emptiness of space for any signs of extraterrestrial intelligence. Suddenly, a sharp beep cut through the silence. Elena's head snapped up, fatigue instantly forgotten. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up data streams and analysis tools. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. "It can't be," she whispered, double-checking the readings. But there was no mistake. The signal was strong, structured, and undeniably artificial. After decades of searching, they had finally found it, proof of intelligent life beyond Earth. Within hours, the news spread like wildfire. Government officials, scientists, and journalists from around the world converged on Arecibo. The signal, originating from a star system 40 light-years away, contained a repeating mathematical sequence that couldn't be explained by any natural phenomenon. As Elena briefed a room full of wide-eyed officials, she couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension. "The signal appears to be an invitation," she explained. "It includes what we believe to be coordinates for a reply." The debate that followed was intense. Should humanity respond? If so, what should we say? The United Nations convened an emergency session, as experts from various fields argued over the potential risks and benefits of contacting an alien civilization. Days turned into weeks, and still, no consensus was reached. Some nations pushed for an immediate reply, eager to establish peaceful contact. Others urged caution, warning of the potential dangers of revealing our existence to an unknown, potentially hostile force. As the world argued, Elena and her team continued to study the signal, trying to glean any additional information about its senders, but nothing could have prepared them for what happened next. It was a crisp autumn morning when the skies above every major city on Earth suddenly darkened. Massive ships, each easily the size of a small country, appeared in low orbit. Their sleek, otherworldly designs defied human engineering principles, and their sudden arrival sent shockwaves through global defense systems. Panic erupted worldwide. Military forces scrambled to respond, but their jets and missiles seemed pitiful against the enormous alien vessels. Communications networks were flooded with frantic calls and messages as people sought information and reassurance. In the chaos, Elena found herself whisked away to a secure government facility. Her expertise on the original signal was now invaluable as world leaders grappled with the reality of first contact. "Why didn't we detect them approaching?" demanded a grim-faced general. Elena shook her head, still struggling to process the situation. "Their technology must be far beyond ours. They could have ways of traveling or cloaking themselves that we can't even imagine." As governments worldwide declared states of emergency and civilians huddled in fear, a message was broadcast simultaneously on every communication channel on the planet. The aliens had made contact, and they were nothing like the peaceful beings many had hoped for. The message was clear, concise, and chilling. "People of Earth, we are the Zarkoth. Your planet is now under our control. Resist, and you will be eliminated." As the ultimatum echoed across the globe, humanity faced its greatest challenge. The debate over whether to make contact was now moot. First contact had been made, and it had come in the form of an invasion. The question now was, how would Earth respond? Elena looked out the window at the looming alien ship, its massive form blocking out the sun. She realized that everything she had worked for, everything she had believed about the potential for peaceful contact with alien life, had been shattered in an instant. As the facility around her buzzed with frantic activity, she steeled herself for what was to come. The future of humanity now hung in the balance, and the real test was just beginning. The Zarkov ultimatum hung heavy in the air, a suffocating blanket of dread that enveloped the entire planet. In the United Nations Security Council chamber, an emergency session was underway. World leaders, connected via secure video links, argued passionately about how to respond to the alien threat. "We must show strength," thundered the Russian representative. "If we surrender now, we'll be slaves forever. And if we fight, we'll be annihilated," countered his Chinese counterpart. "You've seen their ships. We don't stand a chance." As the debate raged on, Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat quietly in the corner, her mind racing. She had been brought in as a scientific advisor, but in the face of such overwhelming military superiority, what could science offer? Suddenly, the chamber fell silent as a holographic projection materialized in the center of the room. A Zarkoth representative, tall and insectoid, its exoskeleton shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence, addressed the assembly. "Humans," it began, its voice a discordant melody of clicks and hums, translated by an unseen mechanism. "Your time to decide has ended. We will now demonstrate the futility of resistance." The hologram shifted, showing a live feed from orbit. One of the Zarkov ships was moving, positioning itself over the Pacific Ocean. A beam of intense energy shot from the vessel, striking the water. In seconds, a massive whirlpool formed, growing larger and more violent with each passing moment. "My God," whispered the U.S. president, "they're going to drain the ocean." The Zarkoth representative continued, its compound eyes gleaming. "This is but a fraction of our power. Submit, and you may live as our subjects. Resist, and your world will be remade in our image, devoid of your kind." As abruptly as it had appeared, the hologram vanished, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Elena's mind was reeling. The level of technology required to manipulate water on such a scale was beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. How could they possibly fight against such power? The UN Secretary General, his face ashen, addressed the assembly. "We need time. We must sue for peace, buy ourselves a chance to." "No," interrupted a voice from the back of the room. All heads turned to see General Marcus Chen, head of the newly formed Global Defense Initiative. "We fight." Elena watched as Chen strode to the center of the room, his presence commanding attention. "The Zarkoth think they know us, that they can predict our actions. But they've made a critical mistake. They've underestimated the human spirit. And what good is spirit against their technology?" scoffed the French representative. Chen's eyes blazed with determination. "Throughout our history, humanity has faced seemingly insurmountable odds. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and our own destructive nature. Each time, we've emerged stronger. We adapt, we innovate, we endure. That is our greatest weapon." As Chen spoke, Elena felt a spark of hope ignite within her. He was right. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to unite and innovate in the face of existential threats. "We need time," Chen continued. "Time to study their technology, to find weaknesses. We need to present a united front while secretly preparing for a war unlike any we've ever fought." The room erupted into debate once more, but this time with a different energy. Plans were proposed, alliances formed, and strategies discussed. As the hours wore on, a consensus began to emerge. Earth would appear to submit, but behind the scenes, every resource would be poured into understanding and countering the Zarkoth threat. As the meeting adjourned, Elena approached General Chen. "I want to help," she said, her voice firm. "My team and I, we've been studying their communications. Maybe we can find a way to." Chen nodded, cutting her off. "I know. You're already on the list. Report to Geneva tomorrow. We're assembling the best minds from every field." As Elena left the UN building, she looked up at the alien ships looming in the sky. The sight that had inspired terror just hours ago now filled her with a grim determination. The Zarkoth had demanded Earth's surrender, but they were about to learn a harsh lesson. Humanity didn't know how to give up. The next day, as world leaders publicly announced Earth's submission to the Zarkoth, a secret war was already beginning. In hidden bunkers and classified labs across the globe, The best and brightest of humanity were preparing for the fight of their lives. The Zarkoth might have superior technology, but they were about to face an enemy unlike any they had encountered before, an enemy with nothing to lose and everything to fight for. 3 months into the Zarkoth occupation, the aliens' grip on Earth seemed absolute. Their massive ships hovered over major cities, silent sentinels enforcing their will. Humanity appeared broken, its militaries disbanded, its governments mere puppets of the alien regime. But appearances can be deceiving. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, in a sprawling complex shielded from Zarkoth sensors, the heart of human resistance beat strong. The Global Defense Initiative, GDI, had transformed this former particle accelerator facility into a hub of frantic activity and innovation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez hurried through the bustling corridors, her lab coat fluttering behind her. She burst into the central command room, where General Chen was conferring with his top advisors. "We've got something," Elena announced, her eyes bright with excitement. "The Zarkoth communication network. We've cracked it." Chen's eyebrows shot up. "Show me." Elena pulled up a holographic display, showcasing a complex web of data streams. "Their system is incredibly advanced, but it has a fatal flaw. It's too perfect." "Explain," Chen demanded, leaning in closer. "The Zarkoth rely entirely on quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication across vast distances. It's unhackable and undetectable, in theory. But we found that the system creates minute gravitational disturbances. With the right equipment, we can not only detect their communications but potentially disrupt them." A murmur of excitement rippled through the room. It was the first real breakthrough they'd had since the invasion began. "How soon can we weaponize this?" Chen asked. Elena hesitated. "That's the thing. We need to get close to one of their ships to test our theory. And we need someone who can think like them, predict their responses." Chen nodded grimly. "I think I know just the person." Hours later, Elena found herself face to face with Captain Zoran Mosu, a young tactical prodigy who had been handpicked by Chen. Zara's unorthodox strategies in war games had caught the general's attention long before the invasion. "So," Zara said, her dark eyes intense as she studied the data Elena had presented, "you want to give the Zarkoth a taste of their own medicine." Elena nodded. "If we can disrupt their communications, even temporarily, it could give us the opening we need." Zara was quiet for a long moment, her mind clearly racing. Then, a slow smile spread across her face. "We don't just disrupt them. We feed them false information, make them see threats where there are none." "A phantom army," Chen mused, catching on to Zora's line of thinking. "Exactly," Zora continued, her excitement building. "We use their own perfectionism against them. They'll be so busy chasing ghosts that they won't see the real threat until it's too late." The plan was audacious, borderline insane. But in the face of annihilation, insanity might be humanity's only hope. Over the next weeks, GDI cells worldwide began implementing Zora's strategy. Dormant military equipment was reactivated, sending out false signatures to confuse Zarkoth sensors. Resistance fighters launched hit-and-run attacks, always vanishing before the aliens could respond in force. The Zarkoth, accustomed to easy victories and total control, found themselves increasingly wrong-footed. Their perfect communication network, once a source of strength, became a vulnerability as humans fed false data into the system. In Paris, a Zarkoth patrol stumbled into an ambush, their advanced weapons rendered useless by crude but effective electromagnetic pulses. In Tokyo, a daring raid on a Zarkoth supply depot succeeded because the aliens were busy chasing phantom threats on the other side of the city. With each small victory, hope spread among the human population. The whispers of resistance grew louder, bolder. But the true test was yet to come. Elena, Zara, and a hand-picked team were preparing for the riskiest mission yet, a direct assault on a Zarkoth ship. As they geared up in a hidden hangar, Elena felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration. The plan was to use a modified stealth aircraft to approach the ship, deploy their communication disruption device, and escape before the Zarkov knew what hit them. "Remember," Zara briefed the team, her voice steady despite the stakes. "We're not trying to destroy the ship. This is about sending a message. We're showing them that we can hurt them, that we're not as helpless as they think." As they boarded the aircraft, Alina caught Zora's eye. In that moment, a wordless understanding passed between them. They were about to change the course of the war, to give humanity a fighting chance. But more than that, they were about to show the Zarkov, and themselves, what humans were truly capable of when pushed to the brink. The hangar doors slid open, revealing the night sky. Somewhere up there, the Zarkov waited, secure in their supposed invincibility. They had no idea what was coming. As the aircraft lifted off, disappearing into the darkness, Alina allowed herself a small smile. The real battle for Earth was about to begin. The stealth aircraft sliced through the night sky, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to both conventional radar and Zarkov sensors. Inside, Alina gripped her seat tightly, her heart pounding as they approached the looming alien ship. Zora's voice came through the comms, steady and focused. "Remember, once we activate the disruptor, we'll have a small window before they adapt. Make every second count." As they drew closer, the sheer scale of the Zarkov vessel became apparent. It dwarfed anything humans had ever built, a city in the sky that seemed to defy the laws of physics. "Now," Zora commanded. Alina activated the disruptor. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then suddenly, the massive ship shuddered. Lights flickered across its surface, and for a brief instant, it seemed to lose altitude. "It's working," Alina exclaimed, her eyes wide with disbelief. But their victory was short-lived. Alarms blared as the Zarkov ship began to recover, its systems rapidly adapting to the disruption. "Evasive maneuvers," Zara shouted to the pilot. The aircraft banked hard, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy weapons. As they fled, Alina caught a glimpse of chaos erupting across the alien ship's surface. Smaller craft were launching in disarray, their coordinated defense patterns thrown into disarray. They had done it. They had struck a blow against the seemingly invincible Zarkov. As they returned to base, the implications of their success began to sink in. They had proven that the Zarkov could be hurt, could be confused and disrupted. It wasn't much, but it was a start. In the days that followed, similar strikes were carried out across the globe. Each time, the human forces struck quickly and vanished, leaving the Zarkov reeling and increasingly paranoid. But Alina knew that technology alone wouldn't win this war. As she pored over the data from their raids, a pattern began to emerge. The Zarkov, for all their advanced technology, were surprisingly inflexible in their thinking. They relied heavily on pre-programmed responses and seemed to struggle with improvisation. "They don't think like us," Alina explained to General Chen and Zara during a strategy meeting. "Their entire society seems built on rigid hierarchies and predetermined actions. They're not used to an enemy that adapts and thinks creatively." Zara's eyes lit up with understanding. "So we use that against them. We become the most unpredictable, irrational enemy they've ever faced." Chen nodded slowly, a grim smile spreading across his face. Guerrilla warfare on a global scale, combined with psychological operations, will drive them crazy. And so began the next phase of Earth's resistance. Instead of focusing solely on military targets, human forces began a campaign of carefully orchestrated chaos. In New York, resistance fighters reprogrammed Zarkov patrol drones to play ear-splitting human music. In Moscow, they used holographic technology to make it appear as if the city's statues were coming to life and attacking alien forces. Each action was designed not just to disrupt Zarkov operations, but to confuse and destabilize them psychologically. The aliens, used to fighting enemies that followed predictable patterns, found themselves increasingly off balance. Alina's team worked tirelessly to analyze Zarkov psychology, looking for weaknesses to exploit. They discovered that the aliens had a deep-seated fear of the unpredictable, a cultural aversion to chaos that bordered on the pathological. Armed with this knowledge, the resistance stepped up its efforts. They began spreading rumors among the alien forces, playing on their fears and insecurities. Zarkov commanders, paranoid and unsure who to trust, began making mistakes. In Rio de Janeiro, a Zarkov garrison was thrown into disarray by the simple act of releasing thousands of colorful butterflies near their sensors. The aliens, unable to distinguish between the harmless insects and potential threats, wasted precious resources trying to contain them. As the psychological warfare escalated, cracks began to show in the Zarkov's once impenetrable facade. Reports filtered in of alien soldiers refusing orders, of commanders making irrational decisions based on perceived threats that didn't exist. But the resistance knew they were walking a dangerous line. The Zarkov, pushed to their limits, were becoming increasingly erratic and violent. Entire city blocks were vaporized in retaliation for minor acts of defiance. As the human death toll mounted, Elena found herself grappling with the moral implications of their actions. Were they saving humanity, or leading it to annihilation? Late one night, as she sat alone in her lab, wrestling with these thoughts, Zara found her. Having doubts, the young tactician asked, her voice gentle. Elena nodded, too tired to hide her concerns. Are we any better than them if we're willing to sacrifice so many? Zara was quiet for a long moment before responding. We're fighting for our very existence, but that doesn't mean we have to lose our humanity in the process. We're not just fighting against the Zarkov. We're fighting for who we are, for what makes us human. As Elena pondered Zora's words, an alert flashed on her screen. New data was pouring in from their latest operation, and buried within it was something that made her breath catch in her throat. Zora, she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and excitement, I think we found their weakness. Elena's fingers flew across the holographic keyboard, her eyes darting between multiple screens of data. Zara leaned in close, her brow furrowed in concentration as she tried to make sense of the complex diagrams and equations. Explain it to me again, Zara said, her voice tense with anticipation. Elena took a deep breath. The Zarkov ships, their weapons, even their personal technology. It's all connected through a quantum network. It's what gives them their incredible coordination and processing power. But look here. She pointed to a particular set of data points. There's a pattern in the quantum fluctuations, a rhythm we didn't see before. And that means, General Chen asked, having joined them moments ago. It means their entire system has a central point of origin, Elena explained, her voice rising with excitement. A quantum core that synchronizes everything. If we can disrupt that core, we can bring down their entire network, Zara finished, her eyes widening with realization. Chen's expression hardened. Where is this core? Elena's excitement faltered slightly. That's the problem. It has to be on their main ship, the one in high orbit that never descends into the atmosphere. We've been calling it the mothership. A heavy silence fell over the room. The mothership was the Zarkov's command center, the heart of their invasion force. It was also the most heavily defended object in the solar system, surrounded by a fleet of smaller craft and protected by energy shields that had thus far proved impenetrable. So we need to get onto the most secure Zarkov ship and somehow sabotage a piece of technology we barely understand, Zara summarized, a hint of a wry smile on her face. Sounds impossible. Impossible is what we do best, Chen replied, his voice grim but determined. Doctor, how soon can you develop a device to disrupt this quantum core? Elena ran some quick calculations in her head. With the resources we have, a week, maybe 2. But getting it onto the mothership. Leave that to me, Zara interjected, a plan already forming in her mind. We'll need to coordinate a global assault, something big enough to draw their attention away from the mothership. Chen nodded. I'll contact our cells worldwide. We'll throw everything we have at them. As Chen left to make preparations, Alina turned to Zara. Even if we get onto the ship, even if we manage to plant the disruptor, there's no guarantee it will work. And whoever goes on this mission, it's likely a one-way trip. Zara met Alina's gaze, her expression resolute. Then we better make it count. The next 2 weeks were a blur of feverish activity. Alina and her team worked around the clock, developing and testing the quantum disruptor. It was a delicate device, about the size of a smartphone, packed with some of the most advanced technology ever created by human hands. Meanwhile, Zara coordinated with resistance cells across the globe, planning what would be the largest synchronized attack in human history. Every Zarkov outpost, every patrol, every ship within reach would be hit simultaneously. As the day of the operation approached, tension in the base reached a fever pitch. Everyone knew that this could be humanity's last stand. If this failed, there might not be another chance. The night before the mission, Alina found Zara in the hangar, making final preparations on the stealth craft that would carry them to the mothership. "You don't have to come, you know," Zara said without looking up from her work. "Your brain is too valuable to risk." Alina smiled softly. "My brain is exactly why I need to come. If something goes wrong with the disruptor, I'm the best chance we have of fixing it." Zara finally turned to face her, concern evident in her eyes. "It's probably a one-way trip." "I know," Alina replied simply. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of tomorrow's mission hanging between them. Finally, Zara spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you really doing this, Alina? You're not a soldier." Alina thought for a moment before answering. "Because every time I look up at the sky and see their ships, I'm reminded of why I became a scientist in the first place. To explore, to understand, to push the boundaries of what's possible. The Zarkov took that sky from us. I want to take it back." Zara nodded, understanding. She reached out and squeezed Alina's hand. "Then let's go get our sky back." As dawn broke, the resistance launched its assault. Across the globe, Zarkov forces found themselves under attack from all sides. Confusion reigned as their communication networks were flooded with false information, courtesy of Alina's earlier breakthrough. In the chaos, a single stealth craft slipped away from Earth, climbing higher and higher, carrying with it the hopes of humanity. On board, Alina clutched the quantum disruptor to her chest, her heart pounding as they approached the massive form of the mothership. This was it, the moment that would decide the fate of Earth. As they drew closer to their target, Alina closed her eyes and whispered a quiet prayer. Not to any god, but to the unyielding spirit of humanity that had brought them this far against impossible odds. The final battle for Earth was about to begin. The stealth craft approached the Zarkov mothership, a behemoth that blotted out the stars. Alina's breath caught in her throat as she took in its sheer immensity. Beside her, Zara piloted with intense concentration, her hands steady on the controls despite the enormity of their task. "There," Zara whispered, pointing to a barely visible seam in the mothership's hull. "That's our way in." As they drew closer, alarms suddenly blared through the craft. "They've detected us," Alina cried, her heart racing. Zara's jaw clenched. No turning back now. With a burst of speed, she drove the craft straight toward the mothership. Energy weapons lanced out, missing them by mere meters. At the last second, Zara fired the craft's own weapons, not at the mothership, but at the seam she'd identified. There was a blinding flash, and suddenly they were inside, skidding across a vast hangar bay. The craft came to a shuddering halt, smoke pouring from its engines. "Move," Zara shouted, grabbing the quantum disruptor and pulling Alina from the wreckage. They sprinted across the hangar, alarms wailing around them. Zarkov soldiers poured in, their insectoid forms eerily graceful as they moved to intercept. Alina fumbled with a device on her belt, activating it with trembling fingers. A wave of electromagnetic energy pulsed outward, shorting out the Zarkov weapons. In the confusion, she and Zara slipped through a doorway, finding themselves in a labyrinth of alien corridors. "Which way?" Elena gasped, clutching the disruptor to her chest. Zara consulted a holographic map they'd compiled from stolen Zarkov data. "This way. The quantum core should be at the heart of the ship." They ran through the twisting passages, the sounds of pursuit growing ever closer. Twice they were cornered by Zarkov patrols, only to be saved by Zara's quick thinking and combat skills. Finally, they reached a massive door, pulsing with energy. "This is it," Elena breathed, her scientific mind marveling even now at the advanced technology. Zara set to work bypassing the security systems, while Elena prepared the disruptor. Just as the door began to slide open, a barrage of energy blasts erupted around them. "Go," Zara shouted, shoving Elena through the opening. "I'll hold them off." Before Elena could protest, the door slammed shut between them. She found herself alone in a vast chamber, dominated by a swirling vortex of light and energy. The quantum core. With shaking hands, Elena activated the disruptor. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the device began to pulse, sending waves of counteracting energy into the core. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The core flickered, its steady rhythm disrupted. Throughout the mothership, systems began to fail. Outside, the battle took a sudden turn. Zarkov ships, once coordinated with terrifying precision, began to move erratically. Some collided with each other, while others simply hung motionless in space. On Earth, resistance fighters watched in awe as the seemingly invincible alien forces fell into disarray. This was their chance, and they seized it with everything they had. In New York, a team led by General Chen himself stormed a Zarkov command post, overcoming the confused aliens with surprising ease. In Beijing, citizens poured into the streets, overwhelming the disoriented invaders with sheer numbers. Back on the mothership, Elena worked frantically to keep the disruptor functioning. The quantum core fought back, surges of energy threatening to overwhelm the human device. Suddenly, the chamber door exploded inward. Elena turned, expecting to see Zarkov soldiers. Instead, a battered and bloodied Zara stumbled through. "Thought you could have all the fun." Zara grinned, though her eyes were tight with pain. Together, they faced the writhing quantum core. "We need more power," Elena shouted over the rising whine of energy. Zara looked at the disruptor, then at Elena. Understanding passed between them. "Together," Zara said. They each placed a hand on the device, channeling their own bioelectric energy into it. The disruptor flared to life with renewed vigor. The quantum core pulsed once, twice, and then, with a silent explosion of light, it collapsed in on itself. Throughout the solar system, Zarkov technology went dark. Their ships, their weapons, even their basic systems, all dead. On Earth, humans looked up to see the Zarkov fleet falling from the sky, no longer held aloft by their advanced tech. A cheer went up, starting in small pockets and quickly spreading across the globe. They had won. In the mothership's core chamber, Elena and Zara collapsed to the ground, exhausted but alive. They had done it. They had taken back their sky. As emergency systems kicked in and gravity began to fail, Elena looked at Zara. "So," she said with a weak smile, "about that one-way trip." Zara laughed, a sound of pure relief and joy. "I guess we'll have to figure out our return policy." Around them, the mothership began to drift, no longer the heart of an invasion fleet, but a tomb for the Zarkov's ambitions. And below, Earth spun on, battered but unbroken, its people united as never before by their shared triumph. The war was over. The future, uncertain but full of possibility, beckoned. 1 year after the fall of the Zarkov, Earth was a planet transformed. The sky, once dominated by alien ships, now buzzed with human spacecraft salvaged and reverse-engineered from the invaders' technology. Cities that had been reduced to rubble were rising again, their skylines a mix of familiar architecture and strange, new forms inspired by Zarkov designs. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the window of the newly established Global Space Agency headquarters, watching a shuttle launch in the distance. Even after all this time, the sight still filled her with wonder. Admiring the view, a familiar voice asked. Elena turned to see Zara, now Admiral Mosu, approaching with a smile. The young tactician had been instrumental in coordinating the global reconstruction efforts, her strategic mind proving just as valuable in peacetime as it had been during the war. "Just thinking about how far we've come," Elena replied, her voice soft with reflection. Zara nodded, her expression turning serious. "The council is ready for your presentation. Are you sure about this, Elena? Once we do this, there's no going back." Elena took a deep breath, steadying herself. "We can't hide from the galaxy forever. We need to take our place among the stars." Together, they walked into the council chamber, where representatives from every nation on Earth waited. The faces that looked back at them were a testament to how the war had changed humanity. Old enemies sat side by side, united by their shared survival. General Chen, now Secretary General of the United Nations, nodded to Elena. "Dr. Rodriguez, you have the floor." Elena activated the holographic display, showing a map of the galaxy. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we learned from the Zarkov databases is clear. We are not alone, and we are not safe. The galaxy is filled with civilizations, some peaceful, some not. The Zarkov were just one of many potential threats." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Elena continued, her voice gaining strength. "But we have an opportunity. The Zarkov invasion force was just a small part of their empire. With their defeat, a power vacuum is formed. Other races are scrambling, redrawing boundaries, forming new alliances." She zoomed in on a section of the map. "We've detected signals indicating a federation of peaceful races in this sector. I propose we send a diplomatic mission to introduce ourselves and seek alliance." The chamber erupted in debate. Some argued for isolation, for focusing on rebuilding Earth. Others pushed for immediate expansion, to claim the Zarkov's former territories before someone else did. Zara stepped forward. "We can't hide, and we can't conquer. Either path leads to our destruction. We need allies, but more than that, we need to show the galaxy who we are. Not conquerors, not victims, but survivors. Innovators, a species that faced annihilation and emerged stronger." Her words seemed to resonate, calming the debate. Chen spoke up, his voice carrying the weight of his experiences. "We've seen the worst of ourselves in this war, but also the best. Our strength isn't in our weapons or our technology. It's in our diversity, our adaptability, our unyielding spirit. That's what we need to show the galaxy." The vote, when it came, was nearly unanimous. Humanity would reach out to the stars, not in fear or aggression, but in a spirit of cooperation and exploration. As the council dispersed, Elena felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She and Zara walked out onto a balcony, looking up at the night sky. "So," Zara said with a grin, "ready for another adventure?" Elena laughed. "As long as this one's not a one-way trip." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, contemplating the stars that now represented possibility rather than threat. "You know," Elena said softly, "before the invasion, I used to look up there and feel so small. Now I look up and I see all we've accomplished, all we could become." Zara nodded. "We faced our greatest challenge and survived. Whatever's out there, we'll face it together." As if on cue, a streak of light crossed the sky. Humanity's first faster-than-light probe, heading out to make first contact. It carried with it messages of peace, scientific knowledge, and the story of Earth's resistance against the Zarkov. Elena watched it disappear into the distance, her heart full of hope and anticipation. The Zarkov had come to conquer Earth, but in doing so, they had unlocked humanity's true potential. Now, the entire galaxy was opening up before them, full of wonders to explore and challenges to overcome. The war had forged humanity into something new, a spacefaring civilization ready to take its place among the stars. As Elena looked up at the endless expanse above, she knew that this was not the end of their story. It was just the beginning. The dawn of a new era had arrived, and humanity was ready to meet it head-on.